We need to win this game.
I need to find my keys.
I need to pass this test.
I need a date.
I need to get out of this mess.
Just get through this treatment. Just to get me through this day.
I need my father to be healed.
I need to stop doing this.
I need him to change his mind.
Find a wife.
Find a husband.
Keep my business from folding.
I need a new job.
I need my parents to get along.
Need a
Change
break.
the test results.
Help from my daughter. My marriage to be saved.
I need a miracle.
So if you don't know this, that was my mom standing up here, and whenever she used to use my full name, I'd be in trouble. So it kind of felt a little weird as she introduced me, Josh Brown. But yeah, my name is Josh. I'm new on staff here, and it's good to be with you this morning. We're kicking off a new series called Miracles Then and Now, and I know that miracles is a word that maybe is foreign to us. We don't talk about a lot. It might be an idea that we're gonna jump into and you're like, yeah, this is kind of edgy. This is on the verge of like, I don't really know what I believe about miracles. So to soften this conversation, I wanna give you a moment of vulnerability for myself. Moment that I asked for a miracle. I used to run out in the country here in Van Wert County, and you know, it's so nice to run out in the country because there's fields on your left and your and there's no cars coming down the road, or there's very few houses that are watching or people that are watching. So I'm just chugging down the road and I'm like, yeah, this is great. The perfect time to talk to God. The perfect time to say, you know what, God, I need something. So this is an occasion that happened often. I'd be running down the road and I'd look at God and say, God, would you just give me the ability to fly? And I'd be running down the road and I'd be like, God, I'm gonna give you a nudge. And I'd take a little jump and close my eyes and hopefully I didn't touch the ground. And I touched the ground every single time. And this happened often as I'm running down the road. I'm like, God, do a miracle in my life. And sometimes we enter into that agreement. It's like, God, I don't expect you to give me this miracle, but I'm gonna ask, and it'd be sweet if you did anyway. That miracles sometimes we're like, okay, we don't expect it, but we're still asking for it. Lots of times miracles can be funny, can be fun, can be like extra, but other times miracles aren't as fun or extra that we ask for. Wherever you're at, either in your faith or if you don't believe and you're just checking us out, there's a chance that in your life you've asked for a miracle from God or from something or someone else. And I imagine that we've all found ourselves in that place in one point or another. And in a minute, I'm gonna ask for a little bit of participation from all of us, but I wanna tease this out. In a minute, I'm gonna ask you to raise your hand if you've ever asked for a miracle. For some of you, that miracle might be something trivial or might be something that is extra, like asking for the perfect house to come up. I'm in this season of life where I'm looking for a house and it's like, God, if you would just give me that right house that has the right amount of bedrooms, the right amount of bathrooms, and a granite countertop would be super nice too. That's awesome. I'll take it. Maybe you've asked for a job. You're like, I need a job and I might be third on the list, but if you just give me this job, like I'll be so thankful and I promise I'll work really hard. God, give me that miracle. Maybe it's just a financial hole that you're in that you're like, yeah, I dug this hole, but God, if you would just take me out of it, or if you just give me the miracle that would take me out of this hole, I would be so grateful and I promise I'll do better next time. And sometimes our miracles are then even a little bit more serious than that. Maybe you're hoping for a child and you as a couple have prayed for a child, but it hasn't happened and you're like, God, if it would happen soon or if it would happen at all. Or maybe you've prayed for a sickness that you've encountered, that you've had, and you've lived a life, a season of pain, of suffering. You're like, God, just relieve this sickness or this pain in me. Relieve this from me. Take this burden from me. Or maybe it's not you. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's your friend. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's someone that you're really close to, and you plead with God or whoever you're pleading with for a miracle. God, would you just do this? Would you just take it away? And sometimes we have a lot of hope, and sometimes we have a lot of expectations and it doesn't happen. And sometimes we're just moving in that direction, asking for a miracle, and we're just hoping that would be the case. So in any of these categories, whether it's something trivial or it's something serious, it's something easy and extra or something hard, would you have the courage to just raise your hand if you've ever asked for a miracle from anybody, from God, from anything? Yeah. So many hands, you can put your hands there. There's so many hands in the room, and I think it's something that we have in common. Because when we hit a moment of desperation or we hit a moment of want, it's natural for us to turn and ask for something that might be supernatural in our lives. I think it's something that we can all relate to. And another thing that we can all relate to is for most of us, for many of us, we raise our hand, we ask for a miracle, but that miracle didn't happen. That miracle didn't come through. And we're left devastated because that thing that we wanted so much, or the thing that we hoped for so much, didn't happen. It didn't come through. So we're left far from God. And maybe in that case, that when you raise your hand, you're thinking of an instance. Maybe you've scratched and clawed your way back, and you've found yourself in a right relationship with God after that devastation of the missed miracle. But maybe you haven't. And maybe you're sitting here today and you feel far from God and you never really got back because of the loss that you felt. And following that, in light of that, if you haven't found your way back from God, or if you're seeking God for the very first time, you might feel far from Him, and it might reflect or detract you from people like me or religious people that you know, people who have faith. It's like, yeah, you have so much reliance on miracle, but I'm smarter than that, or I know that like it doesn't always happen, so how can I trust? How can I trust in something, a higher power to give me a miracle because it hasn't happened, and you kind of feel turned away from that? Or maybe the opposite is true of like, you look at people that have a faith, that hold on to miracles even though they don't happen, and you're like, I just wish I could get back to that place. You just wish that you could have the faith that they have, that you once had, but it's just so hard because you feel the loss or the lack of that miracle that was given to you, and you desire, but you can't get back there. I think in any of those situations, we find ourselves asking, like, where do we go from here? In the next few weeks, we're going to be continuing the series on miracles, and I want to invite you back. At the beginning of this message, I want you to come back for the next few weeks because we're going to be talking about the formula or lack thereof formula of getting a miracle or acquiring a miracle, whatever that actually means. We're going to talk about how to keep hope in light of our circumstances and maybe persevering with hope when we don't get a miracle. And then the last week, we're gonna talk about leaning into the posture that we need to have to be able to see and receive a miracle. So come back the next few weeks. They're gonna be really great, and we're gonna dive into that. But today, I wanna take a step back and look at like the bird's eye view of what a miracle is. I wanna talk about kind of the high level view of a miracle and look at it and establish a framework for how we see a miracle. So as we move forward, this is going to be a little bit of an abnormal message. Typically, we work through a lot of Bible verses or passages and kind of take some narrative out of Scripture. This morning, there's going to be very little of that because we're looking at it from kind of a big perspective point of view. However, come back next week. We're going to dive into some of the specifics in Scripture as it talks about it. But this morning, this is going to be more apologetics. And if you don't know what the word apologetics is, that's okay. I am right there with you. Until I was in like a few years ago, I thought apologetics means that I needed to make an apology for something. And I always wondered, like, why do I need to apologize for my faith? Isn't it supposed to be something big and up front in my life? Why would I need to apologize to people for that? And then I found out that apologetics is just creating a defense or an argument for something that you believe in. And in this case, we're going to be creating an argument or a defense for miracles. And to start out, I think we have to address this thought. And this is crucial to this conversation, but to more. I think we need to begin by thinking about the way that you've been thinking. And it's like, okay, well, duh, we need to think about the way that we've been thinking. But in our minds, in our thoughts, with every word, every phrase, every definition, we have a framework to which we see things through. And in order to change, in order to grow in any circumstance, we have to think about the way that we've been thinking. We have to think about our narratives. We have to think about the way that we grew up. We have to think about how we got to this point and where we're going forward. And not only is this important just in our normal thoughts, I think this is a key cog to spiritual growth. That if you would consider yourself a Christian, it's our goal or our movement to be following in the direction of Jesus. And in order to follow in the direction of Jesus, we have to adopt what he said, what he did, what he taught. And the only way to adopt that is to think about the way that we've been thinking and sometimes take out the things that aren't good or aren't healthy for us. And in this case, we're gonna think about the way we think about miracles. And it's my assumption, and maybe I'm wrong about you, but it's my assumption that when we think about miracles, that there are two camps that you might be in. And this is just the way most people work, the way that I work, that we find ourselves on one side or the other. With miracles, you might find yourself over here, and you don't believe in miracles at all. Your definition of miracles in your head, you're like, I just don't. I don't believe that that happens anymore. I don't believe in the process of that. And I'm kind of skeptic of anything that would be considered a miracle. And then on the other hand, you might be super reliant on miracles. Well, like your entire faith is built on a singular event in your life or someone else's life that you observed, and you're like, my faith is here because of this one miracle that happened in my life. And although that's not bad, I think we need to be careful. We need to be careful because what happens in your life when something doesn't happen or a miracle doesn't happen? Is your faith at risk of crumbling, of falling down? So we find ourselves in one camp or the other. Maybe you find yourself somewhere in between. And I just want to take a second for us to ground ourselves in where we're moving forward in this series with talking about miracles. So there's two questions that I want to hit before we jump into some of the content that we're talking about today. There's two questions that help us formulate what we think about miracles. The first one is, well, we're going to start with what makes a miracle a miracle. Like, what are the qualifiers? What are the things that go into a miracle, and how do we let that inform us on the way we think about it? The second thing is related to this relationship of miracles and Christianity. How do those two things interact? Do they have to interact? And that's the second question, is do you have to believe in miracles to be a Christian? Do you have to? Is it essential? And if you're not a believer, if you would say, yeah, I don't follow Jesus, I'm just checking this out. Maybe you've asked this question because you have some sort of background on like what a miracle is, and you're like, I'm not really sure. The answer to this question, do we have to believe in miracles to be a Christian, is yes. However, I think, and I believe, that there are two miracles that are essential to Christianity. Two miracles that we have to address, that they combine together, that if you don't, I'm not really sure that you can consider yourself a Christian, because these are so evident and straightforward that we just have to start with two. And when we start with those two, everything else that we might see in Scripture or in our lives might have a little bit more validation moving forward, because we can see through the lens of these two specific miracles. And what I love about this conversation is these two miracles, one of them, almost everybody in the world already accepts. Almost everybody in the world already says, yeah, I can get behind the fact that this is a miracle. And to start there, we have to go back to the first question. We have to answer what makes a miracle a miracle. And I think there are three qualifiers that allow us to see what that is, and maybe they back up that first miracle that we're going to talk about in a second. The first thing that makes a miracle is that it's temporary. A miracle happens in a moment. It's limited. It's not forever. It usually happens in a moment, and it changes things, but it doesn't continue to happen, or it doesn't change the laws of nature, which takes us into the second qualifier, is that it's an interruption. For us, we look at our world and we can see things that are normal. We can see the natural order of the world, of the universe. This is where we kind of intersect with this conversation of science and faith. And depending on where you've come from, science and faith don't interact with each other. One's evil and one's where we should be. But I think that if we take a step back and look at science and faith, if we hold a stance of belief in God as a Christian, if you consider yourself a Christian in the room, that science supports the natural order of the way that God created the universe? That we can look at that and say, okay, so there is a way that the world works that's observable and repeatable. And over time, we can see the repetition and we can observe it and we can say, okay, so this is how we come to chemistry. This is how we come to physics. This is why we can explain gravity. What goes up must come down. It's observable and repeatable. And what a miracle is an interruption in that observable and repeatable nature. It steps in and says, hold on, wait, for a moment, things are gonna be different. Things are gonna change, and it's abnormal. It's unusual. And it's usually very noticeable when a miracle like that happens. The third qualifier is that it's purposeful. Every time we see a miracle, it always has a purpose. This is the reason why I wasn't able to fly, why I'm running down the road, because there was no purpose to it. I might have thought there was a purpose to it, but miracles always have a purpose. So as we look at this and we say, okay, this is what a miracle is defined as, these three qualifiers, we can start to look at events and say, okay, this is a miracle, this is not. And I think for many of us, we sometimes use this word out of context, miracle. So I just want to give an example of what we view a miracle versus just something that's cool or something that's amazing or something we can be thankful about. So I'm driving down the road in the winter season, and there's a patch of ice, and I'm coming up to a bend, and this is a true story, and it's not extreme, but it gets the point across. I'm driving about 50 miles an hour, and I see a patch of ice coming up in front of me. So I hit my brakes, and I start to slow down, but I hit the patch of ice, and then I turn, my car's turning sideways, and I am perpendicular with the road, and I'm sliding down the road. Now, most people that I would have told this to are like, wow, I can't believe you didn't hit a pole and go out of control, or a car wasn't coming the other way. But the reality is what happened in this story is I was driving my car, it was going sideways down the road, I started slowing down, and then I stopped. And people could have said, that's a miracle that you're okay. And don't get me wrong, it's awesome. I'm thankful that there wasn't a car coming. I'm thankful that there wasn't a pole right there that, like, if I went slightly off the road, I would have hit. I'm thankful for that. But I'm not sure that that was a miracle, because the friction between my tires and the ground started to slow me down, and it's just kind of the way that nature worked, and there happened to not be a car coming the other way. But if I'm going down the road and I start slipping on the ice and I'm turned sideways and a car is approaching me or a pole is right there by the side of the road, and right as I'm about to hit either one of those, my car teleports through the other car to the other side. I stop, the car goes by, or I go through the pole and I stop and I go on my way and I'm perfectly fine. That's a miracle, because it's unnatural. It happened in a moment, and hopefully it was for a purpose that I was able to go on with my day. That didn't happen, but if it did, that's a miracle. It's unnatural, and it's amazing. And I think it's okay to decide the difference between the two of those, and there are amazing things in our world. The growing of a baby inside a mother's womb is amazing and wondrous. The fact that our planet in the solar system is perfectly placed to where it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's right there in the center, tilted on an axis at the perfect place so that we can have an atmosphere, so that we can have water, so that we are in the perfect place, that's amazing. That's incredible. But it's not a miracle. It's the natural order, and I think it's just as, we're just as able to be thankful for that and to say, yes, God, thank you for designing it this way, but it's not an interruption. So as we look at this, I think these two miracles that we're gonna dive into are not like that. They're not relatable to nature. They're not related to the way that God designed this world specifically and the way that things worked. I think they break that pattern, which is kind of gives us a baseline of where we're going or why we believe that miracles are essential to Christianity. So the first miracle that we're going to talk about is the birth of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing, and then there was something. And I think we can all agree that something happened, that there was a beginning, that something just came out of nowhere. And we're going to talk about, what caused that or what started that, but we all deal with this baseline of like a supernatural event happened. Something happened, something above nature, something outside of nature happened with the birth of the universe. Something incredible happened, and we can't really explain it, but it did. And there was a beginning point, and most people would agree that there was a beginning point of our earth, of our world, of our universe. And if we can agree on that, then I think we also can agree that everything that has a beginning has a cause. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. Nothing really just happens out of nowhere. Nothing just like springs up and it's like, boom, there was nothing there. There was nothing there, and typically we apply this, that someone or something created the universe. And if you don't attribute this to God, that's fine. That maybe you attribute it to something else, but I think we would agree that the universe, it didn't cause itself. It didn't cause itself. It didn't start from nothing and cause something, and it just became something. Probably if you don't believe that God created the universe, maybe you believe that something did. And you're fine to believe that. And maybe you just are sitting in a place where, okay, God didn't create it, so maybe someone else did, and eventually the scientific community will figure that out. Or it'll be revealed at some point, and I'm okay just being in the unknown about that. But if you don't believe that God created, or if you don't believe that someone created it, you would have to believe that something, or maybe the opposite of that, and I'm not sure if anyone actually believes this, because I don't see any evidence of this in our world, that nothing caused something, that the universe just sprung out of nowhere, and there was nothing, and then there was something, and I to me, look at this and would say, I guess you can choose to believe this, but if you believe that nothing or something came from nothing, and there was no beginning, and there's no cause, and our universe is just here, that's a miracle. That in itself, you don't know where the origin of the miracle is, but that in itself is a miracle. So whether you're in the camp of, yeah, God created the universe, or someone or something else created the universe, or the universe came from nothing, at the very baseline of this conversation is that the universe, the birth of the universe, is a miracle. Something abnormal, something not natural, something supernatural happened, and now we're here. And now we exist in this, so we acknowledge the existence of miracles. Now I want to circle back, because if you're a Christian in the room, if you're exploring Christianity, or if you're exploring church and just want to, kind of be investigating what we believe as a church, as Christians, that God was the beginner. He was the originator. He was the cause of the universe. He was the cause of the birth of the universe. And that might bring you to the question, okay, so if the universe needed a cause because it had a beginning point, what was God's cause and what was God's beginning point? And the best answer that I can give you that I believe in is that God has always been, he always is, and he always will be, that God didn't have a starting point, that he has always existed. But we can rationalize this by saying, through God's character, through the nature, the essence of God, that he decided to create this world, create this universe, create us, because he wanted to have a relationship with us, and he wanted to welcome us and welcome this universe into the world, and because of his character, we can say, yeah, that's a reasonable explanation that someone, God, the creator of the universe, created the universe for a relationship with us. And the account that we typically look at would be found in Genesis, and maybe you've seen this before. Most people have. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is the first verse of the Bible, and this is the only scripture that we have this morning, but I think it stands to say, like, this is our evidence. And in this time, as we observe this story in Genesis, the beginning of creation, I think it tells us something really important. And then it kind of also can get muddied. I don't know if you've ever experienced this in talking about the creation story, if you've ever had a conversation about where we came from or maybe the biblical account in Genesis, you may have gotten into an argument, or maybe there's a group of people that you can resonate with, but you disagree with the way that they see it because you believe that the earth was created one way and another group believes that it was created another way, and there can be some tension around it. And I believe that when we look at the Genesis account, there's a primary thing that we should take away and a secondary thing that we should take away. I think sometimes we get caught up in how God created the heavens and the earth. And let's be honest, if we start to try to understand, like, okay, so God created the heavens and the earth, and if we believe that as Christians, that's great, but I want to find the details out. I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time figuring out very simple things. I spent multiple hours this week trying to connect my computer to the printer. I don't know what's so difficult about a printer, but I don't understand it. Same with Bluetooth. I will never understand Bluetooth, how your phone just connects and there's nothing there. It just works. There's so many things in our life that I don't understand, and you probably don't understand too. So when we step into this conversation, I think it can be challenging to try to find the exact details of creation, which would lead us to look at the Genesis story of creation and say the importance is that God created the heavens and the earth, that it establishes a primary purpose. And in a time where there were a lot of other religions, there were a lot of other competing narratives in the time that said, like, so these gods came over here and they had this battle and they established this story of creation, and then there's a competitive story of creation, and they're fighting back and forth, and then the Jewish people of Israel step in and say, no, we've encountered the one true God, and we're stepping in and we're gonna write this down and we're gonna establish this narrative that we believe is true and that has come into play over the course of the years. The purpose of us writing this down first and foremost is that God created the universe. And then we can go from there, and then we can have conversations. But we start with saying there is one maker, one creator of the universe, and that is God, because he had a loving relationship, or wanted a loving relationship with us. So that's the first miracle. The first miracle is the birth of the universe, and for many of you, we maybe already previously established that, but that's a miracle because it was an interruption in a moment of time, and it made a difference. Obviously, we're here. The second miracle is the resurrection of Jesus. And to understand this, we got to back up just a second. Because in order to establish ourselves as this as being a trustworthy event, we have to trust the people who wrote this down. And I don't know if you feel the same way that I do, but I look in our current world, and I think it's hard to trust people. Or maybe people have a hard time trusting other people because there's a whole wave of like debunking and examining and trying to find the truth and proving people wrong. So whenever there's evidence, it's like there's a constant fight of what's true and what's not. And our primary source of evidence of truth is like video. So if we see it on video, we believe it's true, but if we don't, I don't know if we can trust that. But for this purpose, we have to look back and say, okay, there are some guys who wrote down on paper the story of accounts that happened. And we talk about this when we address the New Testament and address the life of Jesus, that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels of the New Testament, that they are the accounts, the actual events that happened during Jesus' time. And if we can trust those accounts, and we talk about some reasons why as to like their staying power, there's a reason that those have been relevant and stayed with us for a few thousand years, a couple thousand years. There's the language that they use in that is they're not defending themselves. In fact, they're setting themselves up for failure in talking about Jesus, which nobody would do. There are some things that we can point to in those Gospels that let us know, okay, I don't know if they're exactly inspired. I don't know if I fully get behind that, but if we can get to a point just that they're documenting a historical event or historical events, then it can lead us to trust in the fact that the resurrection of Jesus, you can go back, John, that the resurrection of Jesus actually happened. And if the resurrection of Jesus actually happened, then what happened before that, we can follow as well. And it validates that Jesus is who he claimed to be and what he said can be trusted. So Jesus talked about the fact that he was going to die and resurrect and that it would change everything. And because he said that and did that, we have a hard time going against that because it was something miraculous. There's no defense as to if we can trust the account. There's no defense as to this was a special event, which gives us reason to believe everything else that he said, maybe we should listen to as well, that he can be trusted. And I think because he can be trusted, Jesus then gives us a number of things that we should model our lives after, or gives us things that we can also hold as valid. And there's so many things that Jesus talked about in his ministry and in his time, but I narrowed it down into a few big buckets that I think we should take hold of. The first one is that he shows us what the ideal life is. Like for you and for me and to live with other people, there is an ideal life that we should try to eradicate anger and bitterness and frustration with other people, that we should seek to forgive, not hold on to grudges, that we shouldn't lie, we should be honest, that we should live in life-giving community, that doing life on our own typically doesn't land us in a good spot. It might even land us asking for a miracle. That there's an ideal life that we can trust that Jesus invites us into, validated by the resurrection. The second thing is that he talks about the mission of the church, the mission of this church, the mission of other churches in the town of Van Wert, in churches all around the world, that he gives us a mission and a vision to say, this is what you are to do. That those of you who believe in Jesus, it is your job to gather together and to go into the entire world and reach people who don't know me, because I have something that nothing else can offer. And when you reach them, when you pull them in, we're gonna walk alongside each other and we're gonna grow together in the likeness of Jesus. We're gonna start living out and start thinking about what we're thinking about to walk in this ideal life that Jesus has talked about. The third thing that Jesus, I think, emphasizes for us is that the Old Testament can be trusted, but the Old Testament isn't trusted just because it's in our Bible, not just because it's like in this book that's formulated together and we just hold it as like the authority. We hold the Old Testament as valuable and good and helpful because Jesus saw it as good and valuable and helpful. So we can trust that there is things that can impact our life in the Old Testament and the scriptures and the prophecies that were coming true in Jesus' time and even after Jesus' time. And that the resurrection of Jesus validates all three of these things. And we start to have reason because of the miracle that established that. And not only that, I think we look back and we look at the creation story, the birth of the universe that we just talked about. And I don't know if you know this, but there weren't a lot of people around during the creation of the universe. So when we look at Jesus and Jesus validates the creation of the universe, then the miracle of Jesus actually is another validation to the creation of the universe, that if we hold on to those gospels as reliable accounts, all of these things start to click. And not only that, the other miracles that we see in the New and the Old Testament start to be more accepted, start to be more validated in our hearts because Jesus validated them. And in today's world, some miracles can be validated because Jesus stood for that. He taught about it. He led other people in it. He performed miracles that we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks. Those things can be validated. So, as Christians, if you consider yourself a Christian, and if you don't, if you're examining this for yourself, the two basic miracles that we hold on to, that we believe are essential, are that the universe is the foundation of our faith in God. Right? The universe is that evidence to God, the creator God. But then when we look at the resurrection, that is the foundation of our faith in Jesus. And these two things tied together do one thing. It establishes that, yeah, if you can grasp onto those, we can believe that miracles are a possibility. And the second is it gives us a direction for the way that we live our life and the potential that we could see miracles in the future. Now, as we talk about that, the birth of the universe, the resurrection of Jesus, two amazing things that happened. For you in this room, some of you in this room, you look at this and you say, Josh, I don't need a universe-sized miracle. I don't need a world-changing miracle. I don't need something that's gonna affect everyone. I need a miracle that's gonna change something for me in my personal life right now. I'm in desperate need. And if that's you, I wanna invite you in just a second to participate again in a moment of courage. I want you to raise your hand in a minute. Raise your hand if you need a miracle. If you're feeling like you're about to encounter a loss, or if you're feeling the devastation of a circumstance in your life and you're asking God for a miracle and you're like, I have nowhere else to turn, I need this in your life, in your friend's life, in your family's life, to recover from your faith of a lost miracle. If you're facing something right now, we're about to sing this song called Lord, I Need You. And if you need God right now, we all need God, but if you're in desperate need of a miracle, if you need God this morning, I want to invite you to raise your hand and make this your prayer. If you don't need God for a miracle this morning, I want you to look at someone else, gauge the room. If anyone is bold enough to raise their hand in front of a room of people, I want you to look at them and make this song your prayer, only not Lord, I need you, but Lord, they need you. Because we're a community, and a community should show up for each other. So, if you're in a place where you are in desperate need of a miracle, would you just be so bold to raise your hand and let someone around you know? Thanks for your courage. Thanks for raising your hand. If you were sitting around them, and just identify someone. In a second, I'm gonna invite you to stand and sing and just make it their prayer. Lord, they need you. And if you're in that place, gosh, I hope that this can be a moment of hope where we may not know the outcome, but there's hope that the God of miracles has the power to do that. So would you guys stand and let's sing this song together.